Most people know Transformers as robots that turn into cars, but the actual origin story behind these characters is one of the most ambitious mythologies ever created in fiction, spanning cosmic gods, multiversal wars, and betrayals that shaped an entire civilization. Today, I'm breaking down the complete origin of the Transformers universe, and it starts with something truly bizarre. The one before Cybertron, before the Autobots and Decepticons, before Optimus Prime or Megatron ever existed, there was something else. Something with no name, no form, and no beginning. The One. Here's what makes this interesting. The One isn't a god in any traditional sense. It doesn't speak. It doesn't appear. It doesn't intervene. It exists completely outside of space and time, predating literally everything in the Transformers multiverse. Even the most powerful primes in existence can't comprehend what it actually is. And it only ever did one thing. It created two beings, Primus and Unicron, one representing creation, the other representing destruction. Two opposing cosmic forces designed to exist in permanent conflict. And then the One just stopped. It stepped back entirely, choosing to observe the universe through Primus's eyes, but never once acting directly. That's it. The supreme creator of everything made exactly two things, then went completely hands-off forever. No commandments, no guidance, no second chances, just silence. But those two creations, they would tear reality apart. Primus and Unicron. Most people hear Primus and Unicron and immediately think good versus evil, light versus dark, hero versus villain. But that's not really what's going on here, and understanding the difference changes everything about the Transformers' origin. Primus is the embodiment of creation, order, and life itself. Unicron is the embodiment of chaos, entropy, and destruction. They aren't opposites in a moral sense. They're opposites in a fundamental cosmic sense, like gravity and expansion. Neither one can permanently destroy the other because they're two halves of the same equation. Remove one, and reality itself stops making sense. Now, here's where the scale gets genuinely terrifying. Unicron isn't just a threat to one planet or one galaxy, it's a multiversal entity. It can consume entire realities across dimensions. Not cities, not civilizations, entire universes erased. Some fans don't even consider Unicron a villain. It's a force of nature doing exactly what it was designed to do, which honestly makes it worse. And Primus knew this. Primus understood that Unicron would always come back, that the threat could never truly end. So what did Primus do? It created the 13 original primes, specifically as instruments and protectors against Unicron's inevitable return. Every prime, every transformer, every piece of Cybertronian civilization was built as a defense mechanism from day one. The entire species exists because something needed to stand between Unicron and everything else. But creating defenders is one thing. Actually fighting a god of destruction across the cosmos, that's a completely different story. The battle across the universe. Here's the thing about this war. It wasn't a battle. It wasn't even a campaign. It was billions of years of two cosmic forces tearing reality apart across multiple galaxies and dimensions. And most of it has never been shown in any comic or show. It exists almost entirely as myth, ancient Cybertronian legend. And somehow, that makes it even more terrifying. Unicron didn't just fight Primus, he consumed entire star systems, at least 12 of them devoured whole. Civilizations that existed long before any transformer wiped from existence like they were nothing. Planets, species, cultures, all gone. Collateral damage in a war they didn't even know was happening. And Primus chased him through all of it, hunting Unicron across the cosmos in a conflict so massive it literally damaged multiple realities. This is the first war in all of Transformers mythology. Every single conflict that comes after, the Primes, the Decepticons, the Great War, all of it is just a smaller echo of this original struggle. But here's where it gets dark. Primus didn't win, not really. The war ended because Primus made a desperate, permanent choice. He transformed himself into a planet, a cosmic prison designed to seal Unicron out of the universe forever. He gave up his freedom, his form, his ability to ever fight again. That's not victory, that's sacrifice. The good guy survived, but only by becoming a cage. And that single decision, born out of desperation, not triumph, set literally every event in Transformers history into motion. Because when Primus became a planet, he didn't just trap Unicron, he created something entirely new. The birth of Cybertron. Most planets take billions of years to form. Dust clouds collapsing, gravity pulling, magma cooling. Cybertron took exactly one moment, one single instantaneous transformation, and a god became a world. Approximately 10 million years ago, Primus converted his entire entire physical form into the planet Cybertron, not gradually, not over millennia. In one act of total conversion, a cosmic deity became a fully formed, civilization-ready world. And here's the thing that makes this genuinely unsettling. The planet didn't appear empty. When Primus transformed, Cybertron already had geography, infrastructure, and key locations built into its very design. The Well of All Sparks, the sacred source of all Transformer life, was already there. The city of Ekin, future capital of Cybertronian civilization, was already there. This wasn't a blank canvas waiting for inhabitants to shape it. Primus knew exactly what he was building and exactly who would live there. Every corridor, every city block, every sacred site was planned before a single Transformer ever existed. But the transformation did something even more important than creating a planet. It released massive amounts of transformative energy from Cybertron's core, energy capable of converting inorganic matter into sentient mechanical life. Cybertron isn't just where Transformers come from, Cybertron is the source. The planet's core literally generates new life, which means every battle ever fought on Cybertron's surface was fought on the body of their creator. Every explosion, every scar, every chunk of metal torn away during millions of years of war was damage inflicted directly on Primus himself. The Transformers don't just live on their god, they've been slowly destroying him, and the very first beings Primus created to protect that world, they'd end up being the ones who started its destruction. The 13 original Primes. So Primus doesn't just create a planet and call it a day. He creates a team, 13 Transformers, hand-built by a god, each one designed with a specific purpose and powers that no Cybertronian would ever match again. Think of them like the original Avengers, except they're also the founding fathers, and also literal demigods. That's the 13 original Primes. Prima was the first, the leader, the commander, the one Primus trusted above all others to carry out his will. Vector Prime could manipulate time and space itself. Solus Prime was the ultimate blacksmith, capable of forging weapons so powerful they became legendary artifacts. Amalgamus Prime could shapeshift into literally anything, making him the original Transformer in the truest sense. And the rest covered everything else you'd need to build a civilization from scratch. War, science, commerce, magic, philosophy. Every role accounted for, every base covered. Together, these 13 established the Council of Ancients roughly 9.5 million years ago. This wasn't just a government, it was the foundation of everything Cybertronian society would ever become. Laws, culture, identity, all of it traces back to this council. These beings weren't just rulers, they were worshipped. They were the blueprint, and for a while, it worked perfectly. But here's the detail that changes everything. One of those 13 Primes, one of Primus's own hand-chosen creations, was named Megatronus, the Prime of the warrior caste, the strongest fighter among gods. And if that name sounds familiar, it should, because millions of years later, a certain warlord would take that exact name as a tribute. Megatronus didn't just fall from grace, he defined what falling from grace looks like on Cybertron, and what happened next would scar their civilization forever. The betrayal of Megatronus. Here's the thing about Primus creating the 13 Primes. He handpicked them, personally designed each one with a specific purpose, a specific power, and a specific role in protecting Cybertron, and one of them turned on him in the worst way possible. Megatronus, widely regarded as the most powerful warrior among the 13, didn't just wake up evil one day. Unicron got to him. The Chaos Bringer actively seduced Megatronus, exploiting his pride and his growing resentment toward the other Primes. He looked at the Prime hierarchy, saw what he believed was blatant favoritism toward Prima and the others, and Unicron fed that bitterness until it consumed everything else. The corruption wasn't accidental, it was engineered by the one being in the universe who wanted Primus's creations to destroy themselves from within. Megatronus launched a full rebellion against his fellow Primes. Not a protest, not a political disagreement, a war, one that devastated Cybertron's earliest civilizations before he was finally defeated and cast out, earning the name The Fallen, a title that erased his identity as a Prime entirely. Now here's where it gets complicated. Fans genuinely debate whether Megatronus was purely a victim of Unicron's manipulation, or whether the resentment was already there, just waiting to be exploited, because the hierarchy among the 13 wasn't exactly balanced. There were real power imbalances baked into the structure Primus created. Does that justify betraying your creator and siding with cosmic evil? Probably not, but it means this isn't a simple story of a good guy turning bad, and that ambiguity is exactly what makes his legacy so dangerous, because millions of years later, a miner named D16 would look back at Megatronus' ideology and think he was right. That miner adopted the name Megatron specifically to honor the fallen Prime. Megatronus' rebellion never actually ended, it just waited for someone angry enough to pick it back up. This is the original sin of the Transformers universe. Primus' own creation turning against him, proving that no amount of divine design guarantees loyalty. But if you think one fallen Prime is the worst thing Cybertron ever faced, wait until you hear how the remaining Primes barely survived their rematch with Unicron. The defeat of Unicron. Approximately 8.9 million years ago, Unicron made one last push to breach Cybertron and consume everything Primus had built. And for the first and only time in recorded history, the 13 Primes were called to stand together. But not all of them answered. Megatronus Prime, the Fallen, betrayed his brothers and sided with Unicron. One of Primus' own creations turned against everything he was built to protect. Let that satisfying family reunion sink in for a second. Despite the betrayal, the remaining Primes combined their powers, drove Unicron back, and scattered it across dimensions, forcing it into a state of dormancy so deep it essentially vanished from reality. Sounds like a victory, right? It wasn't. Here's the thing nobody wants to admit. The 13 Primes, the most powerful beings Primus ever created, threw absolutely everything they had at Unicron, and they were already down a member thanks to Megatronus' defection. And they still couldn't destroy it. Not even close. They delayed it. That's all. Every Prime who fought in that battle walked away knowing the same terrifying truth. Unicron's return wasn't a question of if, it was when. And that single realization changed everything. From that moment forward, Cybertronian civilization was built on a foundation of quiet existential dread. Every achievement, every golden era, every moment of peace existed on borrowed time. The clock was always running. The threat was never gone, just sleeping. But here's where it gets even heavier. Primus didn't walk away from the fight either. He remained as Cybertron permanently. The planet itself became the seal, keeping Unicron locked out of the primary universe. That means the ground beneath every Transformer's feet is literally the only barrier between existence and total annihilation. And most of them don't even know it. They live on their creator's body, completely unaware that their entire world is a prison door holding back the end of everything. That's not heroism. That's an exhausting, terrifying commitment to a war that can never actually be won. But for a while at least, it worked. And what came next was the closest Cybertron ever got to paradise. The golden age of Cybertron. For 4 million years, Cybertron knew peace. Real peace. Not a ceasefire, not a cold war, not two factions tolerating each other. Genuine civilization-wide harmony. And it's the only time that ever happened. From roughly 8.8 million to 4.8 million years ago, Cybertron entered what historians call the Golden Age. And the name is an exaggeration. Billions of Transformers lived across thriving cities like Icon, Polyhex, and Helix. Science, philosophy, art, and mathematics advanced to heights that no later era would ever match. New Transformers were continuously born from the well of all sparks under a democratic meritocratic system built by Prima and the surviving Primes. It was, by every measurable standard, utopia. But here's where it gets complicated. There's a long-running debate about whether the Golden Age was genuinely perfect or whether its prosperity was built on a class system that quietly excluded miners, laborers, and lower caste workers from the benefits everyone else enjoyed. Because on the surface, everything looked flawless. Beneath it, certain Transformers were locked into roles they never chose, doing work nobody thanked them for, while the upper tiers of society celebrated how enlightened they'd become. And that's exactly the crack that would eventually shatter everything. The Golden Age didn't end with an invasion, no cosmic threat, no catastrophe. It ended because Megatronus' banished ideology, his belief that power should belong to the strong, started quietly seeping back into a society that had grown too too comfortable to notice. Cybertron stopped asking whether its prosperity was shared equally. It stopped questioning who was being left behind, and by the time anyone realized the poison was already in the system, it was far too late. The most beautiful chapter in Cybertronian history was already dying before anyone knew it was sick, and the miner who would finish killing it, he named himself after the Prime who started it all. The rise of Megatron. Everything you know about the Transformers franchise, every war, every faction, every battle on Earth, it all starts with a miner named D16. And the tragedy is that he wasn't wrong. D16 was a low-caste worker, a nobody, one of millions of Transformers who spent their entire existence digging through Cybertron's crust while the Prime descended elite lived comfortably in Yakan. The Golden Age everyone romanticized, it looked very different from the bottom, and D16 saw through it completely. He renamed himself Megatron, a direct tribute to the fallen Prime Megatronus, and that name choice tells you everything. He wasn't just rebelling, he was claiming a legacy, declaring himself the spiritual successor to the most dangerous Prime who ever lived. But here's what most people get wrong about Megatron. He didn't start as a warlord, he started as a gladiator, fighting in underground pits for survival, then slowly became a philosopher. His core argument was brutal and simple. The Golden Age was built on weakness, a system designed to keep miners and workers in their place, while the ruling class pretended equality existed. And the only honest language power has ever spoken is strength. That philosophy attracted exactly the Transformers the government had spent millennia ignoring. The forgotten, the disposable, the ones who had zero representation and zero hope of climbing out of the caste they were born into. Megatron didn't have to recruit them. The system had already radicalized them. He just gave them a name. Over roughly 50,000 years, Megatron climbed from pit fighter to ideological leader to military commander. Around 10,000 years before the Great War, he began building secret military operations and training camps across Cybertron. He successfully predicted governmental collapse and social chaos years before it arrived. And when that chaos hit on schedule, he had an army ready. His movement already called itself the Decepticons, standing in direct opposition to the government-aligned faction that would become the Autobots. The most compelling thing about Megatron is that Cybertron created him. He wasn't corrupted by Unicron. He wasn't imported from some external threat. He was the natural, inevitable product of a society that refused to look at itself honestly. You can trace every single step of his transformation, from oppressed worker to galactic tyrant, and at every step, the system practically begged him to become what he became. He was right about the problem. He was catastrophically wrong about the solution, and that difference is about to cost Cybertron everything. The Great War begins. It didn't start with a declaration of evil. It didn't start with Megatron laughing maniacally from a throne. It started with an argument, a political argument about worker rights and resource distribution that neither side could resolve. And the first real battle, the one that changed everything, erupted at Tarn when Megatron's forces engaged government military units for the first time. Within the first 1,000 years, casualties reached into the billions. Entire cities were leveled. Cybertron's economy collapsed. Its infrastructure crumbled. A conflict that was projected to last a few thousand years would ultimately rage for over 4 million, eventually driving Cybertronians off their own planet and scattering them across the galaxy to Earth and beyond. But here's why this matters. Here's why the origin of the war is the most important part of this entire story. It was never good versus evil. It was two sides who fundamentally disagreed about what Cybertron should be. Both descended from the same creator, both inheritors of the same tragic history, neither willing to compromise. And that's the real tragedy. Primus sacrificed himself to build something beautiful. He watched one of his chosen 13 destroy the First Age. He watched the remaining Primes barely hold back annihilation. He watched a golden civilization bloom for millions of years. And then he watched it all collapse anyway, because the system he built couldn't fix its own inequalities. The Great War is the answer to the question this entire video has been building toward. What happens when a perfect world is built on an imperfect foundation? It burns. And the original sin of Megatronus was never truly defeated. It was just passed down through millions of years until it consumed everything Primus created. That cycle, that tragedy, is the origin of every Transformers story you've ever seen. Every Optimus Prime moment, every Bumblebee scene, every movie, every show, every comic, it all starts right here. And trust me, this is just the beginning. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.